Well, let's look.
Good to go?
Go for it.
All right, this is the October 19th, 2021 Community Committee meeting. In attendance is Mayor Hughes, Councilman Benedetti, Village Planner Eric Fisher, and myself, Councilperson David McNamara. There are also some members of the public in attendance. This meeting has been called to discuss code enforcement in general with as able discussion on the current situation on Farview Road. Can I ask our village planner to kind of expand on that?
I was under the impression that we were to discuss removal of the fence. That's what had been mentioned. I'm sorry, I'm speaking. Can you hold on?
The chair is in
Okay,
charge.
this is
The chair
the meeting
in
up
charge.
here.
You know
You guys, this is this meeting first.
And I'll just leave because you obviously don't want to listen to what I have to say.
We do, there's a time of public
There's-
comment, the chair controls
Like I
when that
said.
happens.
You can't just speak out and start
Yes.
screaming in the
I'm
middle of a public
I'm not
meeting.
screaming.
Oh, you were,
I was not screaming.
you were.
So I was not screaming.
Do you want to stay or do you want to go? It's your choice. The chair is in charge of the meeting and that's it. Public discussion will be happening when the chair directs it.
I'll wait here.
Good.
And I wasn't screaming.
Oh, you were.
I wasn't screaming.
Okay,
Well,
so there will be time for public to be able to speak. I mean, that's typically how most of us do handle these particular meetings. This is technically a work session, is per se how we do this. This is a meeting that, I'm always at. We've invited, the village planner is typically not in a meeting like this. And then there's 3 council members. The 3 council members bring, we have one specific topic or several topics that we will discuss, whether it be streets, communication, whatever. And I'm explaining this just for everybody that's here. So this is actually more of a work session for these 3. Residents are always welcome to come and listen to what's going on. Sometimes they do not allow, I've seen
It's
community,
not typically
Yeah,
an
it's-
open discussion.
correct.
They're not typically.
But we do invite
I always
residents,
invite, but
yes.
I never have had people attend
So that's
before. I
just-
always invite.
So that's just to give, I know that there's some new people that are in here, so this is not a typical council meeting where it's, council meetings, there's directed citizen comments, new business, old business, all that kind of stuff. So at the end, if he directs people to, the plan was to discuss the Farview area as to what these guys believe we should also be doing, not necessarily now. Ultimately, I'm the person that directs or in charge of the code enforcement officer, and it was kind of my direction that we were going to move this way. And it was discussed at the council meeting that we may discuss the possibilities of removing that or the possibilities of working with residents. We have already decided that we gave options for residents. So at the end, it's kind of these guys going to discuss all of that kind of stuff and then maybe get some feedback from residents. So just to kind of clear that up, just so it doesn't sound like we're being horrible people, that's just the way that these typically roll. So go back to your.
Okay, so to the, I guess the overall purpose is to discuss code enforcement as it stands in the village. We had some discussion about how, trying to think of a better word than strictly, or to enforce the code so that it's done in a uniform and fair manner. Eric, do you feel that'd be a good spot to?
Either or, you said you have public here and they seem to be interested in the Farview
That makes sense.
corners. You want to start with that one for your discussion?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that makes sense.
So the Farview and Minerva Lake Road intersection, for those of you who obviously are in attendance and live there, slightly predated my time coming on board, as there were discussions with MI and there was ultimately approvals by the council at the time in which that Farview Road was extended from 161 in an official manner and dedicated from what the right-of-way there between Minerva Lake Road and 161. And as part of that, as part of the development plan, there was also a consistent aesthetic that MI put forward, to my knowledge, which included the fencing that went along those corners, that went along Farmers Road and into the subdivision. You know, and that's not untypical in these, you know, developer-led subdivisions. Sometimes that can happen when, you know, they're paying for things and they, you know, the council goes along with the overall development plan, and that's what essentially was installed at the end of the day. And the Farview Road and Minerva Lake Road intersection was improved, you know, along those lines as well. So now we've got some, you know, changes that occurred, and sidewalk was, you know, added, and, you know, you have today what was ultimately approved back at that time period.
I don't believe any of us were actually in our current positions except for, were you present on council at the time, Tony?
I wasn't on council, but I was coming to the meetings.
Okay. So sadly, we have no one here currently who can expound upon what the discussions were at the time, but it's
Well, I
not,
can tell you from my experience, you know, having gone to the meetings during this episode, is that, you know, the people at that intersection weren't crazy about what was happening there. But there wasn't really any choice in the matter. It's what that was part of the, you know, development plan for MI to build all this stuff. When I say all this stuff, I mean put the fence up and the sidewalks, all part of their marketing plan.
All the Farview, I mean, some of the Farview 4 originally been there, but there was, I believe, for those of you in attendance, there was, because I'd seen in the development plan, there was an option to move to lots that they might have, correct? And
From what I understand on our property,
No, that was not an option.
on 3163, our property on the south east corner lot, I did hear they were talking about making our lot 2 small lots because we've got a very large backyard, but I never saw a plan showing that, but I heard they were talking about that. We bought it after everything was done. We bought it after they had fixed some things, and actually it ended up leading to our house almost being destroyed. I can't go into the lawsuit on that one, but it nearly destroyed our house. And that's why I worry about further things being done. And needless to say, when I purchased it, and the former mayor, Lynn, was at our property multiple times, maybe 3 times, to check on how the basement was progressing due to the destruction. She mentioned multiple times, she said that, like, was checking on it, and at that point, we would talk about things, and I asked her about the fencing, because, A, we didn't really like it, but if we were gonna have it there, we wanted to see about decorating it, because it's, A, not the nicest thing,
it does seem something rough.
and yes, and
I agree
we knew the previous, because I used to come here to golf all the time. I grew up in the north end of Columbus. Minerva Park's a place I trick-or-treated here, so I kind of grew up over here. But we knew they had a driveway back there, and they actually had a pad and everything at that lot. Well, they tore our driveway and our apron out of that road. Don't know why. And when they built it, they built the new drive going back into the development without the apron. They put a whole new sidewalk, a whole new curb there with no sidewalk, and then the fencing in. And we've got an actual sidewalk that now stops, or not a sidewalk, but like it is sidewalk material that runs from our back deck to the street, but it just stops about 3 feet from the fencing because they destroyed that and just stopped it there.
Doesn't sound like it makes a whole lot of sense.
I was like, why would they have done that? That's where the apron and the sidewalk were, or the apron was. But they stopped it when they tore it all out, and they built that fencing there. So we didn't like it, but I asked her, I said, are we able to decorate it, like put bunting up, lighting at Christmas time? She says, no, that's done by MI in the village, so we can't really let you guys do that.
So MI is completely gone from the
That's
management.
correct.
Okay, so well, that's no longer a problem.
yeah, it's our fence at this
Yeah,
point.
so,
Yeah.
are
Did
you,
you
so,
want an answer to what you had originally asked or mentioned?
You did say no, right?
I said, you mentioned about there being an offer about that. There was an offer about it, but it wasn't an offer that actually be accepted because it was never actually approved by the village council. There was a lot of discussion about it, and I know two of the residents that lived on the south side of it had actually made a lot of plans to move, They'd actually done things financially to go that direction, but then at the last minute, it fell through.
So Mr. Segovia, I understand that you're one of the original owners prior to the fence coming up. Sir, are you as well? Do we know if your two neighbors are also original owners? I'm just trying to figure out.
I'm the only one.
Yeah, he's, I purchased new,
Okay,
and I guess the house was purchased from the owner by MI, and we bought it from Remax, who was representing MI in the sale, and MI fixed up all the interior, and it wasn't them, it was just one of the contractors putting in the cabling underground for the new development.
okay.
They shattered our sanitary line, so we had sewage in our
sorry.
house up to about 8 inches of sewage.
I know this may not mean quite as much if you weren't the owners before the fence incident, but I still feel it's worth saying to the, on the record for the 4 residents of this intersection, I'm sorry that these things happened in the manner they did. I know that I would be pretty upset if someone, threw up a fence with minimal to no input or discussion. Sadly, the fences are here, and I guess the most productive thing to do would be to find, if at all possible, a mutually beneficial path moving forward on them.
Well, that's why I've already brought this up, and that we want to talk about, or I think we need to talk about removing fencing, because they've already removed the fence in front of the middle school. I mean, I don't know what the plan, are they going to put that back up?
Yes.
Okay, well, this is where I like to see this head, because in my opinion, we got 2 different issues over there on Farview. It's code enforcement and cutting grass, but we got an issue with the fences. And those were put there, 3 of the 4, Segovia's the only one that's still living there since it started. And the whole intersection issue is why those other 3 people moved. At least 2 of them, and Gina Latimer's probably was like about to move, and
She wasn't there when that happened.
she'd already left.
She had already moved. There's a different boss living there.
Well, but the fences were not,
The fences weren't there when she lived there. She'd already sold it.
well, what I'm trying to say is that they weren't well received when they were put in. And I think we're at that point, I'd like to start talking about, do we need to keep these fences up?
That's a perfectly valid discussion to
And
have.
There's other places throughout the new development that, I know there's places that it needs to be there because of the drop off. But I'd like to talk about what fences we want to keep and maintain. And I don't know that we need, first off, I'd like to understand if Westerville wants those fences up there, in front of the schools. I mean, those fences were only put up there, I don't think to serve any purpose other than aesthetics, to make the entrance into the new development look great. And I don't believe that they perform a function, except for some places, like in the new development where that bridge going underneath the road, there's a fence right there that, protects anybody from falling off the cliff there. And that's something, Eric, I don't know, is that fence even, is there an issue with it being able to stop a car from going over it? I mean, or, because that right there is,
So 4x4s are concreted into the ground. Definitively, they will keep, there's a curb. Someone have to be going at a pretty good velocity to make it over the curb and through a bunch of 4x4s, in the thing, but they're not guardrail, right?
right,
So it won't, it has its limits, right? So it's not guardrail, it won't work with the same defense. It will help, right? But you get enough momentum if you're going the wrong direction. You have to be going faster than the speed limit. You have to be, clearing the curb. There's a lot of physics involved getting over that. So that's possible, right?
well, what I'm getting at is, I'd like to, take a look at what fences we need to keep up. Because it's a maintenance issue. We've already had people, wanting to know when we're gonna paint the ones that aren't painted, or what we're gonna do with those.
So
So,
on that note, with the painting, there was a choice to leave them non-painted, is what happened at the end of the day. Because it actually apparently affected, this was MI's discussion with the mayor at the time, which was Lynn, and the discussion was, if we paint them, it actually makes more of a maintenance issue, and the decision was, I don't want more of a maintenance issue and more of a cost, so leave them unpainted, right? So, and that way they'll just weather and we don't need to paint them.
Well,
You
then,
have,
for me, it gets to be a point, if you don't paint them, then when do they start looking wore out?
Yeah.
You know, and again, I'm back to specifically with the houses at Farview. You know, what I'd like to see happen is that we go to Westerville and say, hey, do you want these fences? If you want them, you're gonna maintain them. You know, that's what I'd like to see, and the same thing with the Farview, people in Farview. Either you take on, these become your fence and your responsibility, or we're gonna take them out.
I don't I may be misunderstanding you, sir. Are you suggesting that Westerville schools take care of the fences all the way down Farview, or just?
No,
in front-
just
Okay,
on
just in
their
front of them.
property.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah.
So going forward with solutions, taking out fencing would obviously be an option. To initiate that process, we would obviously need estimates. It sounds that the maintenance seems to be kind of a sticking point as well. Again, I understand, it'd be a gigantic pain to have to go, mow a second level or on this grade or under the fencing, I'm sure. The code as it's written, to the best of my understanding, is everyone maintains up to the street, up into and including their little grass strip after the sidewalk.
Correct.
I would assume if there was appetite among the residents and the village, that could be made a variance to or modified,
Well,
or how, again, I'm just completely
Yeah.
hypothetically, how would that?
so right now, your neighbor who's not in attendance on the southwest corner, she made contact with us.
Yeah.
We had a nice conversation, and she actually wanted us to do, she said, hey, I see you guys are mowing to the south, how about you just do the corner? That's the one that's paying for me. And we said, okay. So we've taken care of the corner, and she's gonna mow the south. So, we're up for suggestions, right? I mean, people have to do some, our suggestion on the initial letter that came out, just so you're aware, since we haven't spoken yet, was that, we would do the stuff to the south, kind of around, if you took, because you don't have a driveway on that, on
Yeah,
one
they
side.
cut.
You would come around the curve to where her cross driveway was and stop there, and we would do everything south. But we're open for suggestions on working at a kind of an unusual circumstance, just so you're aware.
The reason I haven't really done anything as of yet is when I was waiting at the house for everything, I had an issue with, basically, this is a completely different issue that hasn't been taken care of. I don't remember the gentleman's name, I'm probably before you. I called him regarding literally our lawn and our driveway being washed away.
Oh, no, you and I met.
It was you? Okay.
Yeah, you and I met about the water that comes around that corner.
Yeah, because they didn't do any drainage there.
No,
It's-
what, the water, so what's happening, it's a valid point that we'll have to take up. And I think we're not quite there, but when we redo some things on that street, we'll have to reinforce the curb going around a little more. It just wasn't done correctly, so.
Did we get those trees trimmed while we're talking about that?
What's that?
Improvements to the trees trimmed and.
He
Sorry.
trimmed the trees that are our property.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, cool.
So when the water flows down the way it's supposed to go down the hillside there and then keep going. Unfortunately, what the way the water is wanting to do, it finds a path of least resistance, starts cutting into the side. So we'll have to reinforce some more curb going down that hillside a little bit to keep it from cutting it into the yard.
I don't know if you remember those, because I mentioned about how Lynn mentioned it could be taken care of. And I said I'd be happy if they would just open that area of the fence up again and put a driveway apron, because we'd be able to get in and out
Correct.
and do it.
We had, while we're on that topic, we had a discussion, and I think at the time, she was, the new mayor on board, and she was fine with, wanting to do a gate the way you had suggested.
Mhm.
So we were okay with that, we would approve a permit, if you wanted to do something there.
Okay, well, the gate was more like a man gate, just to
Sure.
get my family in,
Sure,
because
sure,
my parents, they
yeah,
can't, yeah.
there's a valid reason, we had no issues with that, so
Yeah.
you're more than welcome.
But I mean, I'm talking about like now to get, like if we were to get a mower through,
Okay.
it was the problem. And then, but the other thing was like when you hear from one government saying they're gonna take care of it, it's the government's problem. And then all of a sudden you get a letter that's saying you're basically in non-compliance with the code enforcement. Here's what you need to start doing now. I was kind of like, what?
Yeah.
Lynn told me it was gonna be taken up, and I was kind of like, is the government just changing? So that's
No,
why I took, I guess, response to it.
the letter perhaps could have been better, and we've talked about that, you know, we were trying to put out a letter that was, not an official enforcement letter, right, to say, hey, you have 30 days to do this, or 2 weeks to do this, and you must do it, or we're gonna come after you type of thing. So it was the attempt of our code enforcement officer, he's a good guy, he was trying to reach out, and we talked to some of your other neighbors, like the one in the southwest, and, you know, we wanna work with folks along the four corners, so we're not sticking it to anyone just yet, right, so to speak. What we want to do is try to work with you on solutions around that corner, you know, to make it easier. I mean, we recognize it's unusual, right? We don't normally often know people's normal responsibilities of grass, but because of kind of unique circumstances, we're trying to work with folks along those four corners as to what to mow and how to mow it, right? And what we're willing to do. You know, the letter of law says that you have to do all of it, but like I said, we're willing to work with you to take some of that responsibility on right now.
That is the route that I would feel would likely be the most economical and mutually beneficial. I mean, I know Chipper's got a whole lot of stuff on his plate. But again, these people didn't ask for the fence. They didn't ask for the change in elevation. I don't think it's the end of the world if we, you know, took on a little bit of mowing, maybe on the outsides of them.
That's all.
I mean, that's something that,
That's what we offer.
okay, so that's already been
Yes.
offered, good.
That's what we sent them.
So that's it.
There's
So
no.
yeah, and he's here now, we can have a further discussion, even after the meeting, we can meet up again and talk about it.
When you say on the outside, what are you speaking about?
When he's saying on the outside, anything along the right of way there, so your
Is
responsibility.
that what you were saying, David?
Yes, I would suspect that it would be time saving and less maneuvering around if we were to maintain the space on the outside of the fence so that the property owner would be only mowing up to the fence. You could do more of a straight line around it, so to speak, rather than having to do one half and then go around.
I guess I'm not, I mean, I understand what you're saying,
This is what you're,
but that's, but
they're basically not.
But that's what we've been doing.
this.
David's just trying to make a nice suggestion.
So right here, like they're not doing a lot, or around that.
The
that's
basic,
why I'd like to hear what he's saying and not you trying to improvise.
I hear you.
That goes all the way back.
It's okay if.
Yeah, I've driven by there, I just don't have it up in
No,
front
that's why
right
I was,
now.
yeah, that's why it's easier just to see this. So that's what you're,
Yeah, that was what my proposal would be to,
so yes, we were doing that part,
so
but
the
they still have
problem,
to do.
the problem is that the stuff
Just
on the
have to
other
do-
side of the sidewalk isn't being done.
None of it.
Okay. Well,
Do you know, do they plan on putting a sidewalk in on our side when the school is done?
When you say your side, you mean
The south.
the south side across the north-south?
Basically, the south
South.
side to the,
You mean the east side of the park?
continue to the east, the north side. Because I can see the kids leaving that school and walking down the side there,
You look at the-
rather than crossing to Lori's side of the street.
Yeah, it might be that the requirement across the other side, I have to look at the plan with the school set there, 1 second.
that's-
I don't think the school ever plans on kids walking to school that are in the old development because there's no sidewalks, it's against the rules. That's why kids have always gotten picked up by the bus here forever. Except for the Segovias, I think they were able to actually walk from Hawth to Hawthorne without getting on the bus because they lived right there. You know.
That didn't start until later on, when we first started going to school, they didn't have busing for everybody.
Yeah, they wanted to send me from Honey Tree Loop, instead of just letting me go to Parkmore, they wanted to send me all the way down to like, what was the name of the school? Down basically like where Eastmore is nowadays. I was like, are you kidding me? They wanted to throw me in a bus and do that. I was like, why?
Which is people that go to that that middle school that live in the MI development, you know, they would potentially have to walk or someone have to drive them,
Yeah,
because I believe they're within the radius of not having to be bused. So there's only the one sidewalk on the one side, which it seems it would be reasonable to have a sidewalk on the other side, which is the same side as the middle school.
yeah, I just didn't know what they would do. That's kind of my thought, what they would put one there.
So, it's, you know, if everyone else or, you know, the vast majority of the people in the MI section or the section with the little grass strips past the sidewalks are mowing them, I'm not sure that I could make a convincing case for the village to take over just those four. Perhaps, is there, so some of these, well, that map again, would you? So,
That's just one.
yeah, just one of them I
believe
see.
that one's good, actually.
Yeah.
It's good, yeah.
So,
So the site does not have the sidewalk.
Yeah, that
so
site
they
doesn't
technically
have
to
that.
go all the way, and which is not.
Like, to me, it's just odd that ever since I bought my house, it was that was the rule. It was taken care of by MI and.
So, and that, just to give you a quick version of that, because you weren't here when we discussed it, that was on MI. MI decided to do it, MI had a large company that came in and did all of that. We actually just took over the development. I don't know if anybody knows the exact date, but I believe it was like October, November, December of 2020.
Okay.
So,
very late last year.
yeah, it was
early
very
this year.
late last year, so as the season started on, you know, we were kind of giving everybody an opportunity to get their grass cut, and it took us a couple months to realize that these far before we've got an issue. We were starting to get complaints from residents, numerous complaints from residents, why does this look like this? And that's how it was brought to our attention that it's not being done, so I sent Brian down there to have it done once, and then we started our internal discussions as to how are we gonna handle this. Found no, you know, immediate paperwork that said we were going to do this or there was any difference of anything else. So between myself and Eric and our code enforcement officer, we can't allow for residents to not do what the rest of the village is expected to do. So it was, and I took the full blame in the middle of a council meeting and still going to. I personally believe these four homes, not saying that we won't work with them, because obviously you've seen that we are willing to, but until the letter was basically, again, just for, let's get this rolling because we're getting complaints and we can't start doing it for you guys and not do it for other people. So it was my executive decision, letters are going out. So we did see the letters. Yes, like he said, after the fact, yeah, they could have been worded a little bit better to where people aren't thinking that this is a fine. No, and again, not everybody thought that, because one of the residents reached out, super nice, was, you know, what can we do to, you know, figure this out? Eric went, he met with her, problem solved. Like, she's happy, we're happy, it all worked out. So that was really what the letters, in my opinion, that's what the letters were sent to do, and that's what it did do. And typically, you know, that is what a lot of the letters, as we go through code enforcement here in a little bit, that is what my goal has been from day one. My letter has never, or my thoughts to code enforcement has never been, let's stick it to them. Let's get a letter out. Let's get these people let's let them communicate with us. We don't like this, or there's a resident complaining about it, because again, 9 out of 10 letters go out because of a resident complaint or multiple resident complaints.
Yeah.
And let's work with them. You know, we had somebody that was very disappointed because we put a letter on someone's door that they were in the hospital. We don't have a way to know that.
Yeah.
And again, it's just a way for them to reach out, and, you know, the neighbors were upset because we put a letter on the door. But again, it's just for them, if you're having an issue, having a problem, that we're here to have, I mean, we are a small village,
Well, I
like, for
understand.
me,
It's just the four of us, the reason the four of our houses
Yes.
weren't getting mowed was.
because MI was doing it, exactly,
Well,
so,
and the mayor had told us our
Right.
four properties, that it was gonna be taken care of.
and that was correct
It was
for
gonna be taken,
time.
no, she said it was gonna be taken care of indefinitely.
And that would, unfortunately, this,
Yeah.
and unfortunately,
Yeah, no, I mean, it was, I mean, that's,
I also explained that during,
and it's just a punch in the face, kind of how I felt.
Right.
And that's like, wow, that's a.
I also explained that during, in one council meeting during citizen comments. I explained that over 3+ years ago in the letter I replied.
Yeah.
And also when I went to council then, in which, you know, Tiffany, you were a council member, as well as Tony, and Diane was also a council member. You know, I explained all that stuff then at the same time, you know, about what had been said. Lynn was the mayor at the time. There was, you know, there was no action that was taken after the last letter that I sent in reply.
Well, and Lynn, had, you know, had every intention, I'm sure, of taking care of it, you know, but she wasn't in the position any longer.
Yeah.
Right.
And now what it boils down to though is that, you know, you keep saying that other people, you know, have to cut their grass. Well, nobody has had a change to the property like these 4 residents have had that, you know, so there's a unique situation. You know, if we're not gonna tear the fences out, in my opinion, we need to go back to maintaining them. I know you're not in favor of
No,
that.
absolutely not.
Well, but that, I don't know what, you know, the council is gonna think about that, but that's what I'm thinking, is that you keep wanting saying that everybody else has to cut around the trees and the things that are in the right of way. Well, that's true, but those things were all there when they moved there.
And most of these residents were also bought their houses after this was already there.
Yet they were
We've already
also-
established
But
3
we
out of
also
4.
told them to be taken care of.
They were cutting grass at the time you moved in, we understand that. That's where there was a little bit of a miscommunication with, you know, what the private developer was doing versus, and then what the public mayor said to you, and then of course, that is not an agreement that's in writing, nor is that a standard operating procedure, right? So it leaves us in our current situation, which is why
We're here.
we're having this discussion.
Yeah.
I still wish
Because
we had
we're- I mean,
something written, some form of press.
I wish Lynn would have written something down.
Right, and just as an FYI, there are people that don't understand, even in the news section, as we speak today, that are not cutting from the sidewalk to the street because they don't believe that they're supposed to. So as an FYI, this is an ongoing issue with even new residents. So if once again, if I allow our maintenance person to continue to do all of that, then how do I explain to these people that, oh, by the way, you have to do yours, but they don't have to do theirs?
Well, we
So
got-
there is,
we got-
okay, again, can we at least get a little bit back on track? But that's the quick version, is I'm in a position that I have to tell these people that they have to continue to cut theirs, but then I don't have to tell these people to cut theirs. I understand it's a unique situation, but I also understand that this is 4 years ago, this is something that, you know, somebody else did. There's nothing in documentation, there's nothing in writing, I have people that call me and say, Lynn told me that we were selling, and Eric is fully aware of this, Lynn was going to give us this property. So just because Lynn said she was going to give you this property, doesn't mean that I'm going to give you this property and give it as the village. So, and that has been told to me more than once by more than one resident. So now we're getting off of a tangent, but my point is I can't honor everything that Lynn said or Lynn did or anything like that. And at this point, again, we're trying to work with the residents over there. We're not trying to stick it to them. We're not trying to, you know, if there's a happy medium that we can get to. But again, I have people not mowing from the sidewalk to the street, not because you're not doing it, I'm not implying that, but they don't understand that they're supposed to be doing that. So again, it's just, I can't tell them that they have to do it, but then this street, you know, these 4 people don't have to because that there's a decorative fence. Is it something that, you know, council wants to look at removing and we want to get estimates to remove them? Is there, you know, something along those lines? Am I in favor of doing that? Not necessarily, because I actually like it, I think it's pretty, but I don't live there. Things change. I mean, we can all go that direction too, unfortunately. Yeah.
So I think there's 2 issues, if I may. One is the mowing, right? So the mowing is the mowing. Mowing's got to happen. We can all meet separately, so get it with one neighbor, we can discuss what you're comfortable with, what you're not comfortable with, and see if we can work something out, right?
Exactly.
I think we're perfectly willing to do this. The mowing, in my opinion, is an easy thing, right? It's just, so you have to do something, right? That's just, we'll have to work that out, to be fair. Now, the other item, Mr. Chair, is the fence itself and the maintenance of the fence, but I think it's a bit of a longer discussion because at the end of the day, this committee can recommend up to council what, you know, you think should be done, where it should be done.
I think an estimate for the removal on Farview Forest property is perfectly reasonable. I mean, there's no,
We can get you an estimate and, you know, and at a different meeting, you can have a further discussion and see what it truly costs. And, you know, obviously there's some fences, I think as we've discussed, that really shouldn't be removed because there's a drop in a couple of places and we would would have to leave some fence, along those drop areas, much like over a cliff or something like that.
Yeah,
So
like, especially the ones,
The school on the south side, that's an elementary.
that is gonna be the elementary school.
Okay.
Right.
The only reason I ask is I do, like, one of the fences out in front over by the walk area that they've torn down now, that was broken in a couple places by, I'm assuming the middle schoolers going to the path, playing or something. And that's one of my my worries, is when the kids come walking down, and I'm sure, even if there's not a sidewalk, the kids are gonna walk on the grass on our side of the ground rather than crossing the street.
Yeah.
and that is one of the
And we
reasons
worry
I thought they were there for the long-term planning to keep kids off their lawns.
The fence will be continued.
They're not without purpose.
I figured out like our
That
fence
fence
is
is not
broken or something,
Kids
it's,
off lawn.
it's not,
Yeah.
it's not really a deterring fence. It's prickly, flimsy, the fence posts, I mean, the stumps, I mean, the rail, the posts are thick. But even those are prickly and splintery, but the rails themselves are very fine. You put any weight on them, they'll break. And I can see with a lot of kids running
Kids are
down there
kids.
playing on it, yeah, they're gonna be broken quite regularly. That's another worry I have with them.
We'd have to see,
Yeah.
funny things happen,
Yeah.
people use things differently. I
Yeah.
don't think that's impossible assumption by any means.
Yeah, but again, they are elementary kids. That's one thing that made me, I was happier when I realized
They're youngsters.
that was gonna be the younger kids.
They're also gonna be, the way the sidewalk is designed, it's gonna be on the south side of the main entrance, and it's gonna direct them across the street, so.
Okay, so it's gonna try to direct them to
It's
the
gonna
other
direct
side.
them, yeah, there's gonna be nothing on your side of the street, so it's gonna, that was gonna terminate, it's gonna go, take them across, obviously have crosswalking guards.
Okay.
They'll move the walking kids to the other side, and they'll disperse from that point.
Okay. Do you know if they're gonna put any like foliage or anything near the easement to try and maybe even to maybe encourage them to cross the street there?
Yes.
They are gonna put more
Yeah,
foliage
because
there?
what you'll see when the design is finished, it's a very kind of wide open design from a standpoint of entryway to guide the buses, so it's a bus
Okay.
entry primarily and circulation. And so they'll want to keep the kids obviously away from conflict with the buses and the traffic coming in and
Okay.
out, so it's only one in and out.
Okay.
And it'll be properly marked with crosswalks.
Okay.
So yeah, there'll be just one point at which they'll go across.
That's good to hear. So that'll discourage foot traffic.
Yes, helps. And they have to have assigned crosswalking assistance at that point.
Okay.
Too, so.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
I don't know, I think that, without talking around in circles, I think an estimate wouldn't be the worst thing in the world here, but I'm not sure I can make a convincing enough argument to bring to council about taking over the maintenance of just 4 properties. With that caveat, I am very sorry about how this ended up happening in the manner in which it did. And I understand the frustration of it.
No, I think each individual just needs to reach out, and again, you can talk to code enforcement, you can come in, you can talk to Eric, you can talk to myself, we can meet down, however you want to do it, because again, we've worked with the one, figured out what was best for her, what will work, what won't work. Each property is different. Obviously with the one, you've got not yours, we're looking at it.
Where the long.
Yeah, I
fence-
see yours, yeah. So, what can we do to help, what's gonna make it easier for you, what's gonna make it easier for us, and, still maintain the fact that we're not cutting your grass. And work out something that way. So what I would advise, whether or not you wanna stay a little bit after, as soon as we get done, or you can email me, you can email Eric, I can make sure that you have both of those. And then your other neighbor as well, they're more than welcome to reach out and see what we can figure out to make it fair for everybody, as far as that goes. So again, we're not trying to be difficult, but at the same point, we also have to keep it consistent with what everybody else is doing. It is unfortunate that, I continually get people saying, well, I was told this, I was told this, I was told this, but yet we can't find anything, and I'm not disagreeing, I'm not saying that you weren't told that. I mean, it's a matter of, this is where we are. MI is no longer doing it. Yes, it was wonderful. MI did a lot of things that they've been over backwards for us. There's no doubt in my mind that they were doing things that they didn't necessarily need to be
They were
doing.
taking care of the property until they turned it over, so saying they bent over backwards, I don't know.
They did a lot more than they needed to. And in my opinion, they did a lot more than they needed to. There were certain areas that they were cutting, that we found out pretty quickly that they were cutting areas that we weren't planning on cutting. And there were other residents that were not happy when we took it over because they were cutting a lot more that people wanted cut. People would go out there and they would say, can you go ahead and cut the rest of this? And they're just zoop, zoop,
I
zoop.
gotcha.
And they were willing to do it. And I can give you addresses and show you exactly, and they'll tell you, yeah, they were not happy.
Can I speak to you?
Hang on, as soon as I get done in
Sure.
mid-sentence. So as far as that goes, there were areas that they were cutting that residents were very disappointed that we weren't gonna continue to cut, that we just had MI gave us a mow path, and I gave that to our maintenance person, and the mow path is what we stuck with.
Okay.
And there were areas that were being cut in addition to that mow path, and people were not happy that we weren't cutting those areas as well. So, again, we're definitely willing to work with you and, see if we can figure something out. Just reach out or stay here just a little bit and we'll see what we can do. Go ahead, Segovia.
Yeah,
I'd like for the chair to recognize
finish,
me.
yeah.
You know what you said, Eric?
yeah, you can finish your thought, at the end of this, at the end of your thought, we should probably move on to the greater generalities of the
Okay.
code enforcement plan.
Well, MI maintained a lot of, and did things and was allowed to do, put those things up. It was for their financial benefit. The village allowed that to happen. Okay, the reason they cut what they did was for their monetary benefit. Okay, in all those areas. It wasn't because they were going above and beyond and being nice guys. It was solely for their benefit. Okay, the part of the right of way on Farview, south of Minerva Lake Road, north of the development, that has always been right of way that belonged to the village. What's gone on there it was never anything owned by MI. So that's always been under the village control. So the village allowed these things to be put there. Okay, it wasn't a matter of, MI just decided to put them in and the village didn't have any say in it. So if there's no documentation on it about it being there, then I don't know how that got there because that's not the same as the part of the Farview that's north of Minerva Lake Road.
I'm not sure
I'm sorry, what-
I don't understand what we're talking about.
What are we talking about right there? What did MI put in that we don't have documentation on?
I said, am I being allowed to put the fence?
Yeah, that was part of the development plan approval, there's definitively documentation on that.
Okay, I'm going based on what Tiffany had said. She didn't have.
I'm saying documentation that we were going to cut it for eternity.
Yeah, that's not what was discussed. Yeah,
Okay.
so the fence.
That's all I
was
meant by
put in as part of the
documentation.
development plan.
As far as being allowed to put in there, that being allowed to put in there, the village allowed that
Correct.
fence to be put in there.
Correct.
We approved it.
Yeah, we approved it.
Okay? So it wasn't as though the village didn't have a say in that fence being put there.
No one said that.
No one did say that.
So, but the village is allowing that burden to be put on the residents there.
We maintain.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it.
By the village allowing MI to put the fence there, as well as some of the other things there, like the wall, the village was allowing that burden to be put on the residents that reside there.
Right, we also allowed them to put in brand new sidewalks and we allowed them to put in other things that benefit all of the residents as well, so.
Well, right, that benefit all the residents, but the fence, I was speaking specifically to the fence, about the
Okay.
fence being put there. And that's what I was under the impression about, I was told that we were gonna be able to discuss about the fence being removed here, which hasn't really been allowed.
Okay, he actually did, he said he was gonna get an estimate to find out how much it would be
Okay.
to remove
Next
it.
step.
Let me rephrase what I said. I said discuss. Discussion means talk back and forth, not you can come down and listen to our discussion. Okay? So I've already been told, I don't know how many times to stop, you gotta wait till the chair recommends. I'm sorry, but that's not a real discussion. If I'm only allowed to listen and only allowed to speak at certain times.
Okay, we understand that you want the fence removed. Is that an accurate statement? You want the fence removed from your property. You've been to 3 meetings, you've had your
Okay, so
full
number
time.
one, it's not on our property.
Okay.
It's on
Could you
private.
answer, I'm just asking you, this is an interaction, I'm asking you, my understanding is you want the fence removed from your property.
From our property.
Is that a fair
In front
statement,
of-
or from our
in front of your
property? Is that a fair statement?
We like the, yes, I would like the fence
Okay.
removed from that.
So,
I believe all 4 residents at that corner would like the fence removed.
Okay, you believe that, but I'm not sure, I don't wanna speak for anybody else.
You like
Was it-
I've never said that.
Would you like to have the fence removed from your property?
Personally, I would, but if I said I'm on camera now, my wife would kill me.
It's fine. Well, no, I mean, it's fine. But my point is, we don't need to go back and forth whether or not we, so the moral of the story is that there's gonna be a financial part to it. And David has said that he would like to go ahead and move forward finding that out. So I think the back and forth,
Right, I understand. I understand there's a cost about getting it removed. There's a cost about putting in that the village allowed to happen.
okay,
Okay.
but it's gonna go to a council to whether or not they're, not a
Can
second.
you let me finish speaking?
Well, go ahead for a minute, let's, if the chair's okay with it.
You know, you're not really helping. I mean, are you gonna let the sheriff dictate things or, you know, allow me to direct it to?
Okay, if you would like to speak, speak. Eric he has also been quiet. You have come to numerous meetings and we all of us have, and I understand you guys haven't seen it, but we know exactly where you stand, so I would like for you to go ahead and finish what you have to say. It is almost 7 o'clock. We want to get moving to the next part because all of us are, ready to get moving. I know you want the fence removed. I've heard all of it. We've all heard all of it numerous times. So, I'm not trying to be difficult, but continually repeating the exact same thing. I'm fully aware that you want the fence
I'm not
removed and we're gonna move
continually
forward
repeating
trying to at least get an estimate. But at the end of the day, it's going to go to council. This is just a work session type thing.
I understand.
And so having a 2-hour discussion about are we going to remove it? We know you want it removed, we're going to get an estimate, we'll take it to council, and ultimately it's those 6 people that will decide whether or not the fence gets removed.
I think that sums it
I
up.
understand,
That
but
sums it up pretty quick.
But I couldn't even finish talking.
Go ahead.
I don't know how many times I've already been interrupted by Eric when I've been talking.
Okay.
So is that gonna stop or not?
Okay, again, and
Which is why I
okay.
started to leave, because my
So
feeling
we have-
was,
okay.
is that if I stay, it's,
Well, we're trying, he just keeps going.
All he keeps
He
arguing
doesn't
arguing about why he can't speak.
every time. That's why I started leaving, because I didn't feel I was gonna be able to speak without Eric continually interrupting, which has happened.
Spit it out.
See, he just can't keep his mouth shut.
We're just trying to get you to go on with what
But
you're
you
trying to
don't
say.
No, you just
don't
for
get
3
it.
minutes.
It's you, the ones that are creating this. Let him speak.
You just
be quiet.
Why don't you?
Tiff, you just say talking for 3 minutes. Well, I haven't waited.
That's not the thing. You always have to get the last word and keep your mouth. Stop, please.
You know, there's also the cost, you talk about the cost, what I said was that there's a cost, I understand there's a cost for having it removed. And I understand that you're gonna look in to see about the estimate for that cost.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, there's also the cost about maintaining the fence that goes on. You know, it will go on for eternity for however long it's there. You know, there's also the cost of what it takes to maintain around the fence with weed whacking or just the amount of inconvenience that it costs, you know, for trimming, weed whacking, cutting the grass. Now, when the maintenance person was up there this last time, he was there for over 2 hours and he only did maybe half of that area, that right of way. And he was there for over 2 hours, so you got that kind of a cost also, which also involves time. You know, so are those kind of things gonna be taken into consideration?
I would answer that, yes, it will, because that's where I'm going with this whole thing. And I've said it already in this meeting, the maintenance of these fences cost us money. And if they're not serving a purpose, then they need to go.
And 5 minutes ago, that's what I wanted to finish saying, and you would not allow me to finish saying that, and I don't understand why.
You've actually said it in the last 3 meetings we were at.
No, what I just finished.
I've heard that
I did not say in the last 3 minutes.
Okay. I believe
I brought it up the last
I
minute.
think we're good on this subject.
Thank you.
So-
Thank you for your input. I mean, again, I'm fully aware. The reason it took him so long is because it was out of control. They had not been cut in weeks, so that is why he was there for such a long period of time. We've had that conversation, but it was a lot of work to do because it was actually 3 to 4 weeks worth of work put into that many hours. So if it were maintained on a regular basis, it would not have taken anywhere near that long, is my comment to that. There is a cost associated with it. I would also completely agree with that. Fences do need to be maintained. There's going to be a cost. There's a look. Do we want to keep that look? Do we not want to keep that look? The good news is I don't vote for it. At this point, it needs maintained. Whoever maintains it is where we're at right now. It is now 7 o'clock, so I think we've all said our piece when it comes to that.
That looks at the benefit of.
Segovia, you have interrupted me every single time also. I just
No,
want to
ma'am.
point that
You know
out
what?
when I was in mid-sentence. You have done it to me numerous
You know,
times.
if you
But I
feel like I'm
appreciate your
sorry, I will
comments.
leave.
I do appreciate your comments, though. Thank you.
Start back over with David at this point.
Yes, David, go ahead. So,
So yeah, now, we would probably like to move to discussing, the manner in which code enforcement is carried out by the village. Is that a fair assessment of the terms?
I thought that was the topic item,
Yeah, that was-
policies.
So those are the main
I
topics,
think this
yes.
is more your topic.
Yeah,
How do you?
The code enforcement officer's not here, so I tried to get him at the meeting, he's not here, so I don't have anything to talk about.
I would like to thank, I didn't catch your names.
My name is Bruce Ewens. My
That's who you were.
wife is Michelle
Ewens?
Ewens.
Well, Mr. Ewens, thank you for coming out.
Oh, no
I really
problem.
appreciate your.
I was worried it was not tonight, I told my wife, I'm just gonna drive up there and see what's going on, so.
I appreciate you coming out. We appreciate your candor. We appreciate your patience.
Oh, no problem.
Thank you.
Since we're at the end of the growing season anyways, we'll meet, we'll talk about and resolve the mowing at least, and then per David, we'll probably have another meeting and at least have some numbers and then talk about that before recommendation goes up to council.
And I, like, just before we discuss like what we would cut or what you guys would cut or whatever we would do, I would need to talk with my wife as well.
We
We
can
always-
do both.
Yeah, we always discuss, we have Josh mow all our stuff from the village. I think he does a good job. But it was just, to me, it was frustrating after we were told about it, but I understand,
Yeah.
it's nothing's written down, and she dropped the ball on a lot of things, like with our basement, she promised a lot of, we'll help you out and look after you, and
Right.
nothing.
It puts me in a really hard spot because I hear you. I definitely hear you and I've heard it more than once and I'm not throwing any stones anywhere,
No, I understand.
again,
It just
but
happens.
I'm hearing you
Yeah.
when it comes to that.
So-
Again, I think the overarching theme here is, at least from my part, I'm sorry that this happened the way it did to you guys. And we're gonna try to explore options to make it right for you, or make it better, at least. What that ends up being, I don't know. I'll never make, that is not the campaign, but I'll never make a promise that I can't.
And it's not that I
guarantee
wasn't
you
willing to
guys.
work or anything, it's just, I try to be involved, I'm my daughter's soccer coach, so I'm a realtor, I've got a part-time job, I was, for a while.
Busy dude.
For a while, I was sitting with the police department downtown at Columbus on their dispatching service, so, dispatching unit, and it was, I was busy nonstop. And I would try to catch the meetings on YouTube or on the Facebook page, but I've been kicked off of a couple of the pages because I defended the police, and I called one of the Facebook people a trivial shit. And he threw me off the Facebook
Sir,
page.
I must.
It was the guy, he apparently told the chief of police a picture of one of our officers helping out at the riot, handing the little girl a teddy bear, needed to be taken down. He said, you and I talked about this picture needs to be taken down. And I said, if you're telling this picture needs to be taken down, you're actually, this is ridiculous. I said, this picture is beautiful, and it shows exactly why other communities support Columbus at this time. And he made another snarky comment. I said, you, sir, are just nothing more than a piece of trivial shit.
Well, whether this gentleman was or was not, I must emphasize that we are recording.
I'm sorry. And he did, for that, he threw me off the page, and I've been banned from everything
I
since.
take no stand one way or another on stabs to that
For
individual.
the record, I know exactly what you're talking about and that's the first time I've heard anybody bring that up, so.
And I was like, it's a picture of one of our officers
It is,
helping
yeah.
a little girl who was lost in a riot.
Yeah.
I was infuriated, but, so I
There's
just,
actually even more to that story and I'll actually tell you about it
Okay.
after the meeting.
and I'm sorry for
That's
saying
what
that
we're-
online.
Yes, so,
You're not the
so,
first to swear on one of these recordings, and you're
Okay.
not gonna be the last.
and I'm sure I'm on there plenty of times, I keep looking at the two of you back there
I
like.
managed to avoid it so far, well.
So do either of you guys have anything to say? I don't think you're over there by the fence. I don't think you're over by the fence.
I
Are you?
pass the fence on a daily basis.
So the other issue that I have with removing it, just so you guys know, is you're gonna have like a fence and then you're gonna have this section of no fence and then you're gonna have a fence. So like Tony says, are we gonna remove the whole thing? Are we gonna remove just this little section? And again, I can say it 14 times, I can say it once. We are willing to work. We've already worked with one of the residents you know, coming in here every single week after week after week, and I'm just gonna stick up for myself on this, listening to the same thing in a council meeting over and over and over again, is just reach out to us after hours. We would be more than happy to sit down and talk to you. Every one of us has heard it for at least 30 minutes. That's why we're here. We did exactly what we said we were going to do. I don't know that we were gonna have a back and forth discussion. I'm fully aware. We've heard it for 20 minutes as to why, and it's not that it's not important. It is extremely important, but
There's nothing else we can accomplish.
there's nothing else that can be said that hasn't already been said. We know that several residents want it removed. We know that there's residents that probably don't want it removed. We understand that there is more work that goes involved in it. We would be idiots to think that there's not. But, you know, in the same sense, in my opinion, I look at the pictures of the front of your guys' houses and I think it's, you know, I understand they're flimsy, I understand all that because we've seen it over there, but I think it looks great. I think it adds to your guys' houses, in my opinion. Would I put one in my front yard? Yes, I absolutely would. Not because you guys are arguing it, I think it looks nice. But
We can
it's a
maybe
personal
focus on it
opinion.
over time too. There are other options, you know, if the fence is flimsy, you know, the council can make multiple choices moving forward, and obviously that's their call. We'll be back, like I said, for another meeting.
Yeah.
We'll bring numbers and we'll, you know, have a
An
continuing
estimate of what the
discussion.
maintenance per, you know, year is and how many years it would take to break
Yeah.
even on, and again,
We'll make some numbers.
it doesn't all come down to money, but I mean, you know, digging up these concrete posts, or, you know, these concrete anchors with the,
And how much do we do?
How much?
Do we do all the way down, or do we just take out this little section, and is that gonna look silly if you take out one little section and then you've got the rest? And I don't know, I mean, again, I'm not the one that has to cut it, I will also say that, but it does look nice, you know, I get it. We can go back and forth about it all day. Most of us have been at work for 8 hours, I don't know how many hours you've been at work today, so it's 7 o'clock, and this was only half of what we were gonna discuss tonight,
is there
so.
anything
I
particular
need to go
to?
back to work, so.
Do you want to talk about
No,
anything?
I wanna get the heck out.
Then go.
Well, I mean, I'm.
No, I know, I'm not.
Well, I mean, if we have anything that can be meaningfully accomplished, you know, in a reasonable amount of time about how we should be doing codes and code enforcement in the village.
There's a couple aspects of that. So
Exactly. It's a
Tony,
big
while you're
thing.
here, do you want to talk, is it a policy approach issue? Because there's a writing of the code issue, and then I know from, you've been complaining about some enforcement action. So I don't know if you have any specific examples of some policy unhappiness that we can discuss.
I think I would start off with the way the code enforcement officers' letters go out. You know, and that was an issue with
You had some discussion.
with Segovia about the tone of the letter.
True.
And I go back to Brittany Lander's letter that was sent to her about her tree. And it starts off saying that, you know, the village is a viable community and that we live under a set of self-imposed rules. And, you know, following these rules and, you know, if Eric, you're about ready, I mean, see, I'm just trying to be serious, but you're about ready to,
I'm thinking, but go
I
ahead.
know, I get, but you're about to talk, what you usually do, in the middle of what I'm trying to say something. You know, the tone of that letter needs to change. I understand that, you know, there needs to be like an icebreaker or something in the beginning of the letter going out to the people, but for me, that letter says, we have a nice community, we've got a set of rules, and you're not following and you're bringing us down. You know, it's the tone of that letter. You know, that's the first thing I'd like to see change, is the letter and the format of the letter,
So
and how it goes out.
The last council meeting, maybe I'm mistaken, I thought the discussion was, maybe it was a work session, I don't know which one it was, but I thought the council had decided that, you know, as a recommendation back to the mayor, that there would be no more friendly letters, right?
No, we're just
am I
gonna
recalling that wrong?
stick it to them, I guess. Which is exactly what I don't wanna do. I personally like the friendly letters and,
Get that on a flag.
but in fairness to what he's saying, I think that, you know, I think we can all do better when it comes to things like that. I think looking at how it's worded, and I'm gonna go with, I don't know that letter is not from, I feel like that was basically Kelvin's letter and even some of the previous ones. I feel like it's not.
Use it at the last place. What, wasn't he a code enforcement
Yes.
officer somewhere else?
Yes.
He was
They all
And
are.
I think that's
Sharon
what they
County.
used wherever he was at.
It could be.
Yeah, so I think again, this is,
It's a fair statement.
yeah.
I mean,
To look at
you got the letter, what did you think of it?
Well,
The tone of the letter?
I thought it was just like you described, like, you live in a village that basically you're under control, you do this. because I'd only heard that I had to cut it one time pretty much, and it was from my Josh, who said he had heard from the guy who mows it in the village that he was tired of mowing it, and people were complaining, and that we were gonna get a letter telling us.
Right.
And, I never got a letter, never got a letter, never got a letter. Then one day I got a letter, and I was like, and I read it, and I was like, holy crap, that's ridiculous.
So everyone is,
So I think we all agree, right? that-
communication is a human process can always be improved. I think that is
Yeah,
a
it's
fair stopping point that maybe we should have.
A
maybe we
look
should have
over.
look over our
Mhm.
code enforcement.
And what I
laws.
can do is I can actually get the copy of the letter, send it out to council, and let council look to see how maybe they wanna tweak it. And then between myself, Eric, and John, also look at the letter and see how we can word it to where, and I'm just gonna say, I'm not in favor of, not sending out friendly letters. I mean, to me,
I'm not
it could have been
opposed to
worded better, but I would prefer to send out a letter to, and I'm just gonna use the FAR V4, that basically says, you may not be aware, but you guys should be cutting this, in a very nice way.
Yeah.
I don't want to send out something that says, you have 7 days to cut this, or I'm gonna use those words again because it wasn't a joke, but we're going to stick it to you. That's not me, that's not anything that I want to do. We've said it, we wanna work with the people, and that goes for all the different things that we have going on. I don't wanna be that person, I don't wanna be that village.
A person's first interaction with the government should not be
Correct.
negative. I'm in favor of the friendly letters, provided they're done properly.
Correct, so we'll
You guys
review
need
the word.
RV4 t-shirts, by the way, that'd be
Yes.
great.
Well, that was, my first interaction was, I help you, this issue with your basement, don't worry, we're here, we're gonna take care of you. She came in one night, it was like night 2, we had no hot water, nothing. She was, we're gonna support you, and the fire chief was there with her. Then we got nothing else really from her, just maybe drive by one day, hey, how's it going? And, we did find out though, I verified about the fencing and everything, and so I'm thinking, well, at least they did say we've got that taken care of, and then we get this letter, says, you gotta mow the lawn or else, I'm like, wow.
Yeah, so our normal letters are legalese because they have to be written in a certain way, right? And they say, thou shalt do this, or we shall do this, and you shall get leaned, right? They're very not so nice, right? So admittedly, we need to make some adjustments.
Okay.
Okay, well, in that case.
Well, in that case, it's time to go. No, I'm just kidding.
I think we've accomplished everything we can here tonight.
Yeah. No, I think it's fair. I think we know that some people want to look at possibly removing. I think that it's, I don't know in the long run that that's really going to happen. So I think it's
Yeah.
more about having a discussion. How can we make it easier for you? How can you make it easier for us? How can we meet in the middle? And ultimately, I think that that's what most of us want to do, with the exception of removing. And it's just how much do you remove? Do you just remove this little section or do you do all of it? And what does that look like? So that's where we are. Reach out, let us know. We can talk to you for a few minutes after this. I always take over the meetings because everybody knows I have a big mouth. Do you guys have anything
On that note, I will move to adjourn so that the mayor may speak
Fence
freely.
or this is the mowing, which is the issue, that's really what you got to
Yeah.
figure out.
So that's where we're at.
I will move to adjourn so that the mayor can speak freely.
Second.
Oh, I speak freely. I
All
speak
right.
freely right on there.
We stand
There
adjourned.
is, there is
Thank you
no,
for coming out, guys, really.
there is really no issue with that.
Did you go to Northland?
Oh, it's something.